Sports Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Matisse says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Saturday, August 1st, 2026, and it's my official duty to welcome you into episode 568 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to Puerto Rico. I am sitting here in my hotel room in San Juan, Puerto Rico. It is verging on 2 o'clock here in the afternoon. Got in last night, and we got quite a few things to talk about here already. We have some roster news being forced upon everyone due to the NCAA's inability to regulate itself and handle rosters appropriately. So we got that to talk about here shortly. News that broke on Friday night as literally we were landing here in Puerto Rico. And the Buckeyes are getting ready to play some games. So I'm doing this podcast here in between a couple of things on Saturday. Ohio State held up practice earlier today. They went for about an hour and a half. I'm going to talk about that. Had a conversation with head coach Jake Diebler, get to some of the highlights of that here as well. And then obviously talk about this roster stuff. This evening, the Buckeyes will host a youth clinic for about an hour and a half or so. And then there's a tour that will have a food tasting component to it. So I'll be along for that stuff as well. And I've only had time so far to write one quick story to dispatch.com. By the time you hear this, it should be live, detailing the new roster chaos that is all across the sport right now. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Before we do, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as, in this case, our man Bryce Houston can grab them and publish them for us. Shout out to Bryce for handling this on a weekend here. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time to do all those things. All right, so the story that I didn't think would be like the first story I would write from San Juan, but the story that is most pertinent at this moment is that on Friday, a judge in Colorado issued a preliminary injunction giving eligibility this upcoming season to all players who were in the 2022 recruiting class. So in case somehow you're not aware of how this is all unfolded, but the NCAA is moving to the 5 years to play 5 eligibility model that will kick in this season. And players who were seniors this past year who did not get a 5th year were unhappy with that. And so we had some lawsuits and some injunctions granted. And the result of that has been like a constant eroding, once again, of a rule that I think most people generally supported. But now here we are, it's August 1st, and suddenly everyone who played last season, who was from the class of 2022, is on track now to have eligibility for this upcoming season. It's the ripple effects of this are significant. They stretch all across the sport, all levels of the sport, because now suddenly you have a whole crop of players who are experienced, some of them highly talented, who thought college basketball was done for them. But you now, in most cases, have the ability to come back to college, probably make more than you would make as a professional somewhere, whether that would be overseas or the G League or on a whatever NBA lower level contract you might get. Now all those players are sort of back in play, and there's multiple reasons why this creates chaos for lots of people, starting with the fact that rosters are basically set. I mean, it's August 1st. Like, teams have been together for the entire summer, and now there's a whole new crop of players that will be available. Bringing in a player right now impacts that for sure. It could force further moves where a player transfers in. Well, then you want to transfer out, or, a player who did not have eligibility for next year now suddenly does. So lots of guys who thought that they were going to play 20, 25 minutes a game, now we're going to play 5. They're going to be looking to move on. This creates a whole new era of roster upheaval. And I do understand it from the standpoint of the players who are trying to make money and guys who would stand to make significantly more by staying in college for one more year. It will be interesting as this plays out how much these guys are able to make, given that in a lot of cases, NIL money has been completely spent. So if you're going to go out and you're going to add another random player to your roster, you got to come up with the funds for that. And how many schools can and are willing to do that? My guess would be anybody who thinks they can go out and make their roster better is probably going to take advantage of that. And it's something that I did talk with Jake Diebler about. So we sat down this morning for our first interview here on this trip. Met him at a coffee shop right up the road, sort of equidistant from the team hotel and my hotel. In short, this is something that Ohio State's keeping an open mind about. Diebler said, quote, "You're always trying to find ways to position yourself when, like at Ohio State, you're trying to win a championship. You have an opportunity to improve that ability to do so. You've got to explore that with everything you've got. There's a lot of layers that go into adding a player this time of year." Certainly, he pointed to the fact that there's chemistry stuff, there's NIL stuff. You have to have supportive administration. If you want to bring in a player, perhaps it's a revenue sharing situation, or perhaps it's a way that through the university keeping in line with the regulations, you have to help find other NIL opportunities that are above board. Like there's a lot of sort of layers there with that. So Diebler told me, it's unfortunate that you're working on building chemistry and building a team, and now you have this, I guess we'll call it an opportunity to adjust your roster. He said the majority of our time, our focus is on this team, who we have, and how we can help them be the best they can be the best, because I think we've got the pieces to position us to have a really good season. He said that's what we're focused on right now. And he said, like, as a staff, this kind of breaks my brain a little bit here. It said, "Our staff has done an unbelievable job constantly gathering information, recruiting guys. Maybe we don't have a spot, but we're still recruiting guys just in case you do." He said the time you spend in that space is a lot. And he said they have to outwork people, they have to out-prepare people, and he said they're dealing with a moving target. And roster spots, NIL, that has to be in lockstep with the administration. There's ongoing conversations internally about the evaluating where the landscape is today, knowing that come Monday, Tuesday, next week, it might look different. So this is something that could potentially impact Ohio State. The Buckeyes last year had 2 guys who would fit into this category, who would suddenly have now a 5th year of eligibility, Bruce Thornton and Christoph Tilley. Now, Bruce Thornton is clearly not coming back to college basketball after his NBA summer league experience, after being picked with the first overall pick in the second round by the Houston Rockets. Like, Bruce Thornton is on to the next thing. He is not coming back to Ohio State. He's not going to play college basketball next year. Christoph Tilley's more of a wild card right now. Did play for the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA Summer League. Has not announced or signed anything that would indicate what is upcoming. He did enter the transfer portal back in the spring, a move that was designed to keep his options open in case something were to change. So is there a scenario where Christoph Tilley is back at Ohio State next season? It's one guy that could. That doesn't mean he will or that they would do that, but it doesn't rule it out either. This is going to be messy and weird these next couple of weeks, because this is supposed to be when things are like, teams are going to finish these trips, things are going to calm down, and then it's going to be arrive on campus in the fall or for the fall and really start to work with the team that you have. Ohio State has 14 guys here in Puerto Rico. How many will it have when fall practices get underway? How many guys will we see in uniform when the season starts in 3 months in Salt Lake City against BYU? It's wild that that's where we are in the calendar, and we still don't have answers to that. So that's like the news right now that needed immediate addressing as we jumped into what we're going to get to see and what we're going to get to learn about this Ohio State team. So flipping the page now, because I want to cover a couple of things here, and then I've got a lot more to write before I head out to go see some more stuff this evening. So the trip, again, Ohio State began on July 30th, practice in Miami, flew to Puerto Rico on July 31st. Today, practice, clinic, tour. Tomorrow, there'll be a game. Monday, there'll be a game. Tuesday, they'll do some team stuff. There's like a catamaran tour. And then everyone goes home on the 5th. So the podcast schedule is, I'm getting this one out to you now on Saturday, and then I will podcast Sunday, but you will get that one first thing Monday morning, and then I will podcast again Monday evening for Tuesday morning. But in between, I will have plenty of stuff written. So if like you're waiting for the podcast, which is great, you can also, I would encourage you, please go to dispatch.com and read everything that will be coming out of this, because I have a whole bunch of stories lined up here and lots of stories to tell, and hopefully lots of insight to provide. So again, no streaming of these games, no radio, no TV options, nothing like that. And if you are here, the games are open to the public. Coliseo Ruben Rodriguez, and they'll be playing teams Equipo Uno and Equipo Dos. I put the rosters and stuff on dispatch.com if you're curious who made the cut on each of those teams. Now, as far as what we have seen and what these games might be like, they'll be playing under FIBA rules, so it will be different, shorter shot clocks and things like that. Ohio State will have full availability. Josh Ojonwuna will play in these games, and this will be our first chance to fully see him in action, to get an idea what he looks like, how he fits into this team. That was something that Jake Diebler and I talked about this morning. He said he'll be limited, but he said everybody to some degree right now will be a little limited. He said, I want to play everybody. We don't have anybody who's ready to play 35 minutes at a Big Ten level yet, which is fine. We're going to play guys in different positions. There'll be more substitutions than in a normal game. It'll be harder for guys to get in a rhythm, but that's all by design, part of creating some adversity. I said, are you excited to see Josh? Like, keeping in mind, and I should have prefaced all this with this, these are just two games that are two data points in a whole offseason full of information against we'll figure out the level of competition. But like, this isn't going to be, hey, whatever rotations we see or whatever lineups we see, this is what Ohio State's going to use this fall. Like, in my conversation with Diebler today, it was a lot of emphasizing that, like, this stuff is like, there's certainly a trial and error component to how things are going to go in these games. But I said, like, even with all that in mind, like, you've had Josh for a while. Are you excited to see him? And he did point out, he said, we've been able to watch him play the last couple of weeks. He said, we've been strategic bringing him along, but he's been playing competitively now up and down for the last couple of weeks. He said, when he's out there, the physicality of our team looks and feels different. His defensive impact is real. As he's building into being a major component of this team, I'm excited to see some small doses of what that could look like. There was something else that Diebler said when we were talking about just like kind of where the team is right now. I said, what's your approach for this game or for these games? Like, how are you going into these games? He said, the biggest thing I want to see is our guys showing great intent on impacting winning. We should have a high competitive spirit. He said, we have focused more heavily on strength building than conditioning this summer. He said, so everybody's going to play, but our message is, how do you impact winning with your segment? He talked about trying to create adversity. They'll do things like, out of a timeout, they might draw up a play that they've never gone over before to see who can go on the floor and execute it and who can't. So then they know during a season, maybe like, hey, if we got this lineup out there and we're going to run something, it's got to be something we've practiced recently or something that they've gone over before. We can't create something on the fly for like this group of guys. So there's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff coming out of this game. Again, we'll see like level of competition and things like that. But practice today was focused a lot on pressing after makes, ball screen coverages, and ball screen attacks, and just getting some shots up. Now it was an interesting experience, and I'm going to write about all this here soon. But when we got to the practice facility, which was the Jump Sports Development Center, and when we got there, there were kids playing on one court and the other court was open, but there were no lights on. And turned out they had some power issues. So Ohio State began the practice essentially kind of in the dark. It was difficult to see, to be completely honest. And then they got lights back on for a little while, and then they went off. Then they flickered and stayed on, and then they went off, and then they just stayed off. And so by the end of the practice, they had opened up like just any doors that they could to let in natural light, and that was the best that they could do. So it wasn't a super long, super like 5-on-5. There was no 5-on-5 component to it. There was 5-on-0 and just kind of running through some stuff. But like guys were using their flashlights on their phones to tie their shoes. It was kind of wild, honestly. When the lights came on, everybody cheered, and then they just sort of kept playing. I have some videos and some photos that I'll be posting once I finish this episode here. So by the time you hear this, you can find those online. It was loud. I mean, just a pretty standard like youth practice facility, 2 courts, noise kind of echoing everywhere. There's a pretty decent crowd that was watching Ohio State practice to start. There was like a youth team that was there, and then they eventually moved out. And then there was another youth group that was moving in. So there was one segment or one little thing that I noticed amid the cacophony of everything today, and that was that as they were doing this one drill where they were working on setting screens, and it was a 4-man drill. Like it didn't matter what position you were, just they needed 4 guys on the floor, and they would just keep rotating through. And there was one point where they had 3 guys, and like I said, it was loud and it was kind of chaotic, but they needed a 4th guy, and Diebler was yelling out like, "We need one more," and like John Mobley Jr. flat out sprinted to beat Josh Ojonwuna to get on there to be the 4th guy in that drill. And that was an interesting one tiny little glimpse into kind of some of the makeup of this team and the maturation, development, leadership stuff that we've heard a lot about when it comes to John Mobley Jr. going into this season. He's a guy that they're going to lean on heavily in a lot of ways, and certainly from a leadership standpoint. And as you've heard me talk about before, I always find it odd to write about leadership because it just feels a bit nebulous, and like, how do you define it? Like, just, we talk about this guy being a leader. He's a leader. He can, I don't always know like what to do with that. But in this case, like to me, that was one example of why they are high on him taking that big step as a leader this season and being able to assume some of that stuff that Bruce Thornton held on for the last 4 years. And when I talked to Mobley about that after practice, and just about like, hey, you're going to go lead this team tomorrow, like in a way that you really haven't before. Like, are you ready for that? And he said, like, I learned from the best, meaning Bruce Thornton. So had a good conversation with him. That'll be coming up here soon as well. Yeah, it's been busy, like getting in Friday night and then trying to get some stuff written here and get this podcast out to you all, and then get ready for the next thing. There's a lot going on at the moment, and I certainly don't want to miss any of it or fail to bring you along for any of it. So if there are things that you want to hear about, or questions that you have, or things that you're dying to know while we're on this trip, like hit me up and let me know, and I'll do my best to try to get answers. I've got some interviews set up. I've got some story ideas that will certainly have a lot to write while on the island, but then there will be a lot more coming in the days and weeks ahead as we continue to sift through all this stuff. So that's all I've got for right now, having gotten to watch a little bit of practice, catch up with Jake Diebler, and start to get ready for what these upcoming games are going to be like. And then also, again, dealing with the roster stuff. So keep an eye on it. When I know more, we'll pass it along. But yeah, that's where we are right now in college sports. So I'm going to wrap this one up now. Thanks for listening. As always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardydispatch.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to Bryce for getting this out to you all. Again, I will be back with you. I'll record Sunday evening and publish Monday morning, recapping the first game here in Puerto Rico. So stay tuned for that. And until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.